You're legally worth less than a goat. You've got no rights, no legal protection, you're a stranger, and if you want to see tomorrow, you'll have to find a way to fit in. Welcome to 10th century Mercia. This is a very different Britain. Here we find a land divided, and we're on the frontier of a very real and existential threat to our way of life. This is going to be a tough one. So let's get our bearings. I'm still in a familiar location, but everything looks completely different. In modern times I'd be standing on a dual carriageway. In Roman times, in a busy industrial centre. But now, it's far too quiet. I've got to find civilization. There was plenty of that around here in Roman times, but I can't see anything of note for miles. Where there once stood a pristine paved road, there's now an overgrown and bobbly track. This is definitely not the Roman era anymore. As I wander into more open ground, I can see ridge and furrow patterns on the hillsides. Unmistakably Anglo-Saxon open field agriculture, and it's in full swing. This is a big clue as to where I am, and I'd better watch my step. Stoke, that's where I can head to. I know how to get there in modern times. Let's just hope I'm right and it's where I expect it to be. There's certainly more woodland in this time period. I'd be wise to stick to the paths and not take any shortcuts. We don't want to get lost, and those woods could contain real dangers. We don't want to meet any wrong-uns out here. And there are no Roman centurions on the road to keep law and order, and obviously no local bobbies. At least some things never change. So we make it up and over the hill, and there it is, the town of Stoke-on-Trent in all its glory. Or it's just plain Stock at this time. A cluster of unkempt and shabby-looking buildings, mainly betting shops, takeaways and Wetherspoons. But in this time period, it's a small settlement of mostly timbered buildings. One building stands out though, roughly where I know Stoke Minster to be in modern times. Perhaps that could be a good place to start. So if you haven't followed the series so far, and don't worry if you haven't, I'm an accidental time traveller, a potter from modern day Stoke-on-Trent, who's lived in a few different time periods. I've been a Cornovi tribesman in the Iron Age, and most recently a cog in the wheel of Roman industry. This period could prove to be the biggest challenge yet though, if I'm to avoid a pretty abrupt death. Now I said we were looking for civilization, but let's rein in our expectations here. This isn't exactly a golden age that's made the most of the legacy of the Roman Empire. The land's been invaded and settled by foreigners from the continent, and in the early 10th century we now find ourselves in a land under threat again. Whereas the kingdoms that emerged under the Anglo-Saxons are now well established, they've been fighting off a new invader, the Vikings. And they've only just got them under control. In Anglo-Saxon Mercia, we find ourselves on the frontier, the dividing line between the Anglo-Saxon world and the Danelaw, the lands under Viking control. These are tense and uncertain times, so we'd better watch our step with anyone we meet, especially given we stick out like a sore thumb, still dressed like a Roman-era Cornovi tribesman. Let's head towards the church, Stoke Minster. I don't recognise the building, but I do recognise the stone crosses standing outside. The bases are still there today. But things are going to get complicated straight away. You see, as we walk towards the town, people are going to notice. A conspicuously dressed stranger wandering around willy-nilly is not a welcome sight to them. We're going to need to get our story straight. So the locals challenge us, ask us who we are and where we're from. One small problem. We barely understand a word they're saying. Their language is Old English, and it sounds vaguely like a mixture of German and Icelandic, neither of which I speak. I have picked up a few languages on my travels in time though, and which one I choose to try and speak could be the difference between life and death. Firstly, I could try the common Brittonic that I learnt in the Iron Age, but this is likely the worst possible choice. They might think we're Welsh, and that's never a good thing. I mean in the context of this time period, not in general. Even the word Welsh at this time referred to an outsider, a foreigner, or even a slave, and that's not where we want to be. Now I know they're not going to understand modern English very well, but I do have a secret weapon, the Pottries dialect, the local dialect of Stoke-on-Trent. I know that has some pretty solid roots in Old English. There's even a YouTube channel where you can find loads of examples of this fascinating dialect that you should definitely explore more of. So could speaking Pottries dialect help me to identify as a local and fit in? Unfortunately not. While it certainly would raise a few eyebrows and maybe a glimmer of recognition every now and again, it would sound utterly ridiculous to them. We might even be in danger of sounding like a Viking if we're not careful. After all, plenty of words in modern English have Norse origins, and this is definitely something else we want to avoid. My third and final option, is to try the Latin that I learnt in Roman times. How would this go down? Well, in some ways it might be our best option. Latin at this time was the reserve of the educated classes, the clergy, the scholars. Speaking it might indicate that we're no outlaw or servant, and certainly it would give us a bit of gravitas. They might wonder why someone dressed like us is speaking it, because usually it would be spoken by monks or priests. They might even summon the priest from the local minster to talk to me. Would they understand me? Well, sort of. Their exposure to Latin's mainly going to be from reading and reciting church texts and scripture, not speaking it conversationally day to day. And the Latin that I speak is going to be vulgar Latin, and it's going to sound very odd to them. Which one would you try? Leave a comment down below and let me know what you'd do if you found yourself in this situation. Of course, realistically, this is going to end badly whatever we do. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, we stumbled into the Bridgerton version of Anglo-Saxon Mercia, a parallel universe where everyone's really open-minded, and they see this scruffy, archaically dressed speaker of multilingual drivel as a beloved novelty. A bit like the viewers of this channel see me. They decide to introduce us to the local Thegn, the man with the power. The first novelty you might question is our quirky-looking outfit. As a Cornovi tribesman, we'd likely be wearing a tartan-like pattern cloak that looks really out of place here. Fancy braiding and fine needlework have replaced pattern fabrics. Our cloak pin is also going to raise a chuckle. It'll look like something out of the Ark. Another source of mirth might be the bottom of our trousers. Everyone here is wearing wintagers, which are basically like bandages around the top of the boots and the bottom of the trousers, so we look a bit half-dressed. Our facial hair, or lack thereof, is also going to stand out amongst this throng of fine, well-groomed, bushy beards. A Cornovi droopy moustache is just not going to cut it. So despite all of this, we're treated to a welcome feast and invited to tell of our adventures, something that might just save our bacon. The local nobility certainly loved a good story and a night of merriment. We might want to be careful what we disclose though. Stories of Roman Britain might be a stretch too far. To the Anglo-Saxons, the Romans were not fondly remembered distant ancestors. They are a semi-mythical, long-dead race who had powers of construction beyond their imagination. Some even thought they were giants, owing to the huge stone structures that they left behind. In between our storytelling, we'll be eating a lot of familiar foods. We're not likely to find any olive oil, fish sauce or red wine here. Most likely there'll be a lot of hearty rye-based bread, game meat, and it's all going to be washed down with plenty of mead. What we could do is try and impress them with our fancy pottery skills. If I could get used to using a slow and poor quality potter's wheel again. These ones are not a patch on the Roman ones. Still, if I could produce some fancy Roman-looking pottery and offer it as a gift, it would definitely stand me in good stead. Okay, great, he's impressed, and he's vouched for us. Now we're going to have to understand how society actually works round here. So there are three main tiers. At the top are the Thanes, that's the guy we just impressed. Below them are the Curls, who are freemen. Now we've been accepted, this is our place. We have legal rights and protection. And below that are the Whale, foreigners. They have no rights or protection at all. The system that holds all of this together is called the Wergeld. Everybody has a price. And now we have status. People might actually think twice about offing us. It might cost them a pretty penny. So now we've got status, we're sorted, right? I can crack on, set up a pot bank and have a nice peaceful little life here in Stoke. No. Military service is required. This is something that's pretty much been optional to us so far in our journey. We weren't in the warrior class in Celtic Britain, so we weren't obliged to fight, and we didn't have to join the professional Roman army in 130 AD. But here we are expected to serve. It's a duty we owe to our lord. So does this mean we're going to be issued a nice uniform, a suit of armour, a shield, and be extensively trained in swordsmanship? No. This isn't a professional army like that of the Romans. Any weapons or shields I'm likely to be using will be bring your own, and that will be what I can muster or afford. For us that's probably going to be some kind of modified farming implement, maybe a basic wooden shield. Armour? Not likely, so we're going to feel a bit exposed. Being called up also doesn't make us a full-time soldier. The system is rotational, a system that was established under the mighty King Alfred the Great and continued by his successors. So am I likely to be fighting an army of marauding Viking berserkers in open combat? I very much hope not. Seriously, this is unlikely. Yes, things were tense, but this was a period of consolidation. The emphasis is very much going to be on fortifying the kingdoms against the threat of invasion. Most likely we'll be doing building and construction, and lots of it. The major project at this time that was just getting going was the construction of the burhs. Places familiar to us in the modern day were all the sites of burhs from this period: Tamworth, Stafford, Bridgnorth, Wednesbury, Runcorn, and we may even find ourselves on familiar ground fortifying the site of the former Roman town of Chester. So who's directing all of this? Well, Mercia at this time was subordinate to the King of Wessex. At this time that was Edward the Elder, son of the great King Alfred. But we aren't likely to see him round here. The man in charge of Mercia is Aethelflaed, Lord of the Mercians. No, not the useless king that would come a bit later. Although we're not likely to see much of him either. You see, he's very ill by now. No, we're going to be serving under one of the most fascinating and well-known figures of this time. Somewhat of a celebrity, his wife Aethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians. She is one of the real cult heroines of this time, a warrior queen who led raiding parties into the Danelaw and ruled Mercia in her husband's stead. She was a real leader by example, and there's a good chance we'll catch a glimpse of her supervising the works. Military service, though, is only going to be one aspect of our life. There isn't going to be a lot of opportunities to travel, and travelling around would be generally quite dangerous. The roads and especially the woodlands are the haunt of bandits, outlaws, and wild animals ready to prey on the unprepared. The people here are also very superstitious. The woods had other dangers from elves, who brought disease and ill fortune to people. The main thing that will govern our life will be the church. Mercia is a deeply Christian kingdom at this time, especially in the face of the heathens that occupied half of their land. The church calendar is going to heavily influence our lives. Saints' days, feast days, Lent are all going to be observed. It'll even affect our diet, with expected restrictions on eating certain foods on certain days. Of course, we're also likely to need a lot of calories for all that hard work we'll be doing. We'll be eating plenty of bread, pottage and sweet thick ale to keep our strength up for the daily grind. One real home comfort I hear mentioned are oatcakes. Finally! But I'm bitterly disappointed to find out they're actually more like a thick, hard cracker rather than the modern Staffordshire oatcakes that I know and love. Looks like the wait continues for those. I mentioned that travel was mostly avoided, but religious observance is one reason we'd take the risk. Travel's most likely to come in the form of a pilgrimage to a local holy shrine. We have a few in Staffordshire, like those of St Chad, and St Modwen's Well, which was known to have healing properties. Further afield we may visit Glastonbury Abbey or Canterbury, which are major sites associated with the early Christian saints. We might also visit Gloucester to visit relics of St Oswald, recently recovered during a successful raid of the Danelaw by our inspirational leader Aethelflaed. Most likely of all, though, we'd be wise to keep our heads down, blend in, render any service required of us, and do our best to stay alive here until we're able to randomly time travel again. What do you think? Could you have survived in Anglo-Saxon Mercia? Do you think you'd have been able to answer the call to military service? Or would you have taken your chance as an outlaw in the woods? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with your friends, and if you want to see where we end up next, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, do check out the previous episodes in the series as well. As ever, thank you very much for watching, I really do appreciate it. Take care folks, and I'll say thee again next time.